Now, Amnesty International is shining a light on the civilian costs of the fighting in the city of Aleppo, how many civilians are dying. It says the government is launching indiscriminate attacks against residential areas in their attempts to beat back opposition forces, and this shelling is killing civilians, including children. Donatella Rovera is the lead author of the report, and she joins me from London. Donatella, first of all, tell me about the investigation that you were able to make. How were you able to find the information in the first place?
Yes, I've just come back from Aleppo. I was there for 10 days. I was there without the authorization of the government, so to speak, illegally. While I was there, I was able to work around different parts of the city. I met families of people who'd been killed, people who'd been injured in the strikes, witnesses. I went to all the strike locations and collected evidence such as remnants of the munitions that were used. I talked to doctors in the hospital who've been treating people with horrendous injuries from the airstrikes and the artillery strikes. Okay. So that's how I was able to work.
Donatella, are people being targeted specifically, civilians being targeted specifically, or is it just a byproduct of the war between the rebels and the government?
I wouldn't say that the civilians are being targeted specifically, no. What's happening is government forces have, just in recent weeks, started to use aircraft. And at the moment, the big killer in terms of killing civilians in Aleppo, as well as in other parts of the country, are the airstrikes and the artillery strikes. Government forces are using weapons that are designed for the battlefield. These are not weapons and munitions that should be used in an urban context. They have a wide impact radius, a wide margin of error. They are dropping Soviet-era unguided free-fall bombs onto civilian neighborhoods, and they're lobbing artillery shells from several kilometers distance into a civilian neighborhood. The mere fact that government forces are choosing to use these weapons, which are area weapons, which are battlefield weapons, non-precisions, into civilian areas, knowing very well that they have a very limited military purpose, because the chances of hitting specific targets is quite low, and the chances of killing and injuring a civilian randomly is very high. And this is what has been happening. This is what I saw every day in Aleppo. Yeah. Entire families wiped out while they're sitting in their home. Women and children and other civilians out queuing for bread, being killed and being injured by the dozen.
Yes, as we understand, in the last couple of weeks, Donatella, we've been hearing the stories. I mean, this is widely, people say widely that this will be a long and protracted battle. It was the commercial hub of Syria, the largest city in Syria, and while a lot of civilians have made their way out of Aleppo, a lot of people are trapped in their homes, and sometimes, I assume, have no choice but to take their chances to go out and get food or water.
Absolutely. Aleppo is a city of 4 million people. The vast majority of the population has not fled the city, is in the town. Many of them have been displaced within the city. They are staying in schools. They are staying with friends and relatives. And so many have been killed in the very places where they had been seeking shelter. I saw a family that had been sheltering in a school. That school came under attack. It was 2 airstrikes, and 2 children were killed, and 4 other members of the family were injured in that particular school. The same with other houses that came under attack, and the people who ended up being killed were both those who lived in the house as well as their relatives who had escaped their homes under conflict. There is a shortage of bread, so everywhere there is a bakery, you will find very long queues. And again, I investigated several cases where people, including children, had been killed while they were queuing for bread.
Donatella, given the fact that Russia and China continue to insist to stand in the way of international response, that is to say, UN Security Council measures that some people say would reduce the violence. What hope do you have that anyone can do anything given that scenario in the United Nations Security Council?
We've now moved on to a stage, it's a fully fledged armed conflict. It is now much more difficult to bring the situation back from the brink. Quite clearly, we've got two parties, government forces as well as rebel forces, that are quite determined to continue battling each other. And we've got a civilian population caught in the middle. The international community failed spectacularly to address the deteriorating situation in Syria much earlier on, when the situation was less complicated and it was, it was much more possible to do so. Now, the fate of the civilian population is unfortunately in the hands of the belligerent parties, who are not showing a great deal of concern for the civilian population, especially from government side, because the overwhelming majorities of fatalities and casualties are caused by the actions of government forces. It is the government forces that are carrying out the airstrikes and the artillery strikes, because they are the only side that have access to those weapons, and they're using them mercilessly against the civilian population that is defenseless and has absolutely no way of doing anything to ensure safety.
All right. Donatella Rivera from Amnesty International. In fact, you're the Senior Crisis Response Advisor. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me about this from London today.